Hello and welcome to Diversified Wealth and Retirement. I'm Sarah Peterson here with Brad Buckler and Kent Stelges. It's so wonderful to see you guys.
Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Thanks.
You know, we have a lot to discuss today because retirement planning is so important. And as I think 2020 has shown us all, we all need to sort of take advantage of today. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And planning brings us so much peace of mind.
All right. Absolutely.
One thing, you know, that's been on my mind is my grandparents, when they retired, I felt like they had everything mapped out for them. They had their pension, they knew where the money was going to come from, but it's just not that way anymore.
Right. And, you know, we get a lot of people that talk about retirement being easier for our grandparents, our great-grandparents. And I don't think easier is the word, probably less complicated than it is today. You know, I've been doing this 28, 29 years, and I can remember starting in the industry, and the people I would meet with would come in with a pension, which 85% of the people back then had pensions, Social Security, and then a few stocks, but most of them would have CDs, 8% to 15%. So I guess less complicated, yeah, because you had more guaranteed income. Today, it doesn't work that way. You know, 15% of people have pensions today, and nobody can get a CD at 8% or 10% or 12%. So a lot more risk is in the portfolios today. And longevity, you know, used to be everybody retired at 65, you know, and got Medicare. Most of them lived 5, maybe 10 years. Today, we're looking at 15, 20 to 30 years. So you've got to make your money last a lot longer. And planning today is key to retirement. You have to have a full retirement income plan. And it's got to include how you're going to get your income, how you're going to position your investments, taxes. You know, there's got to be tax strategies in planning today, along with legacy planning and estate planning. So probably not easier, but yeah, a lot more complicated.
And so many more options. And, you know, we've talked about this before the show. This is not an education that we get in our formalized education.
Right.
And so if we don't have a professional in our corner, how are we supposed to know about all these options? And we can easily go down the wrong path.
Right. Yeah, and I think there's today with our employers and our employee benefits, we have 401ks, we have 403s. They're simple. They're simple for people to invest money in them, but they're directed towards one thing, and that's a taxable income in retirement. So tax planning is key today, where 10 years ago, we really didn't talk that much about it. IRA conversions to Roth 401ks, things like that.
You know, we have a new administration, and to say that there's a lot of uncertainty in the world, I think, is an understatement. It doesn't take a crystal ball to know that the taxes are likely going up.
Right.
So how do we best prepare for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we're looking and moving forward, there are multiple options out there. It could be that we're looking at doing Roth conversions. It could mean that in your working years, you transition from traditional 401ks to Roth 401ks, right? It's so important when we start looking into those income, right? When the paycheck stops and I'm taking income, how am I going to do that in a manner that lessens or lowers that impact of the taxes on my retirement? One of the simple kind of things to think about for people, if you need, we'll say, $10,000 a month in retirement, and you're sitting there today at about a 20% tax bracket, well, that means you're getting about $8,000 a month net after those taxes. Well, if the new administration bumps those taxes by twice as much and you're at a 40% tax bracket, now you're only taking home $6,000 a month. That's a massive difference in your take-home pay. And how do you navigate those waters really makes it so much more important today to have a tax-efficient plan, income plan in retirement.
I hear this term, the tax time bomb, and I'd love for you to explain that.
Yeah, and basically what we're talking about there is, you know, I talked about 401ks earlier, or 403s, any type of tax-qualified plan. We're told to shove as much money away as we can before we get to retirement. The options that are there are the 401k, 403, things like that, that we're putting in without paying taxes on. Well, in retirement, that is the tax time bomb, because you may have, and Kent alluded to it, you may have built a sizable retirement account, let's say $1 million. And in retirement, you've got to unwind that. And when you do, your number one partner is Uncle Sam. They'll take anywhere from 20, 30, 40%. So, yeah, it's a major issue.
We all need to pay taxes. It's the privilege of being American citizens, but to be able to pay the least amount that's fair is it's a fair request, but I think it's a complicated scenario that a lot of us don't really know how to unravel without a professional plan.
Right.
Oh, most definitely. And we know right now the current tax situation, the current tax brackets are set to expire at the end of 2025, which really puts us on a bit of a time crunch to move forward to get that planning in place to alleviate or mitigate as many of those taxes as possible. Like you said, right, we all need to pay taxes. That's how the country runs. But there's no point in making the IRS or Uncle Sam your biggest beneficiary of your retirement savings throughout your lifetime.
And most people wait too long. We like to say if you're 5 to 7 years prior to retirement, you had better have tax planning as part of your retirement plan, or all you're going to do in retirement is share your retirement with Uncle Sam.
So why don't we let the listeners out there know what it is that you're offering today? They need to call in to 844-484-8620. What is it that you're offering today?
Well, we're offering a complete retirement portfolio analysis. And basically, it includes risk. We'll run your risk to make sure you know your current risk inside of your portfolio. We'll also do a portfolio analysis to tell you whether you're going to run out of money. That's the number one question that we get is, have I saved enough, or is there a chance I'm going to run out of money? We do mathematical calculations that determine whether you've saved enough or not. We also do a Morningstar full analysis. And in that, you'll see how your funds have performed. You'll also see cost involved in it. And then what we think is probably one of the most important is to see if you actually have any type of plan for income in retirement.
So other advisors charge $1,000 or more for this same service, and it's complimentary. If somebody's out there thinking, I work with an advisor, I know where, he has me invested, but he's never talked to me about any of these things, this is the time they can come to you for a second opinion.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, right. We need to know, are you confident enough in the retirement plan you have to seek out a second opinion? And are you willing to risk your retirement to not get that review, right? It just makes sense to get a review. It's complimentary, doesn't cost anything but your time.
I mean, we do it with our doctors. Health and wealth, the two most personal things you can deal with people, and also sort of intimidating. We don't really want to go to the doctor because we don't want to get bad news, and we don't want to, lay all our financial cards on the table. But once we do, and we can get this simplified, it will take so much stress off in the end. So absolutely worth it. We're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about more the importance of creating a financial plan for your retirement.
As a good saver, you've been putting away money during your working years. Studies find that the biggest fear of retirees is running out of money. Market volatility isn't just the downward movement of stock prices, it's the size and frequency of change. The more dramatic the ups and downs, the higher the volatility. This can put savers who are newly retired or a few years away from being retired at greater risk. Today's generation of retirees is not receiving traditional pensions as our parents or grandparents did. Instead, we have retirement accounts such as 401ks or 403bs. These accounts typically expose your money to market risk. The last thing you want right before retirement is to lose a portion of the money you need for income. But how do you turn these accounts into a retirement income? Is it safe to keep all your retirement money sitting in the stock market? The last thing you want is to lose a portion of the money you need for income due to market loss. By working with a financial professional, you can learn how to turn a portion of your savings into an income stream for life and income for the life of your spouse if you're married. We all have moments in our lives when we wish we had taken action sooner. Don't let procrastination reign on your retirement parade. Act now before it's too late. Please call our office to set up your no-cost, no-obligation retirement income review today.
Hello and welcome to Diversified Wealth and Retirement. I'm Sarah Peterson here with Brad Buckler and Kent Stelgis of Diversified Wealth Advisors. It's just so great being here with you, and I'm learning so much already. There's a lot that goes into creating a retirement plan.
Absolutely.
Yeah, an incredible amount, absolutely.
We were talking before the break about income planning, and I keep hearing this income gap term, and I would love for you to explain what that is.
Yeah, so really simply, an income gap is the difference between your secure known incomes, right? Social Security, if you're lucky enough to have a pension, which we know today, 85% of us are retiring without a pension, and the difference between that and your monthly living expenses, right? So if you've got maybe $4,000 a month that are coming in from your Social Security and your pensions, but your monthly expenses are $6,000 a month or $7,000 a month, that difference, that $2,000 or $3,000, is the income gap, and that's $24,000 to $36,000 a year. That's why it's so important to understand what your income gap is and how you're going to solve that problem.
And I'm sure that there are multiple ways that we can do that. What if somebody comes to you and they really don't know that magical number? You know, they talk about how much do you need in retirement?
Right.
How do you figure that out?
And that's a good question. You know, most people, first of all, they don't know when their retirement date is. The majority of people come in when we ask, well, what do you have in mind as a retirement date? Most of them don't have any idea, and they're like, well, you tell us, you know. The number, it's simply what your expenses are, month in, month out. If you're going to take certain expenses into retirement, like your house payment, things like that you know you're going to take into retirement, those are your everyday, day in, day out expenses. On top of that, it's how you want your retirement. What's your dream retirement? So we'll include, if it's $6,000 months a year on trips that they want to do, we'll include that into their planning. That number that we come up with, that month in, month out number, is the number we have to solve for. And like Kent said, if their guaranteed income, whether it's Social Security or pension, is not enough to fill it, then we've got to figure out a way to do it from their portfolio.
Absolutely. I mean, you're dealing with all different people of all different walks of life. I'm sure everybody's scenario is different. My needs are going to be different than yours, are going to be different than yours. What are some of the most common mistakes or pitfalls that you're seeing on a day-to-day in planning?
Yeah, that's a great question, and people often will come in and they'll say, hey, like Brad said, I don't know when I want to retire for sure, right? That's the number one common pitfall right off the get-go, right? You have to have a date to begin to create a plan. Mm-hmm. Or then maybe they think, well, I've got a plan, and they bring in, here's my stack of investments, right? This junk drawer full of investments, and that's their plan. But they haven't even taken the time to start looking at, where am I going to turn on my income from when I quit clocking in and out at work? Am I going to be able to continue to take those trips that I want to take? Am I invested appropriately for my risk tolerance, right? We often find people that have been working at one place for 30 or 40 years will be in the same investments in their same 401k plan that they were 20 years ago when they started the yo-yo retirement, right? The you're on your own.
Okay.
So you come in and
I love it.
Here's my retirement plan, and here's your 401. You put in this much, and we're going to match that much. And then they're sitting the same way 30 or 40 years later, and often that's going to put them in a risk profile that's so much different than where they actually are comfortable at.
Or where they should be.
Or where they should be.
And what do you do in a scenario where someone just comes to you and they're looking to you for guidance, because it's such an emotional decision for a lot of people? Or oftentimes I've seen husbands and wives completely speaking of that, I know that we discussed earlier that you always like it, or you really ask that your clients come husband and wife together.
Yeah.
Which I think is so wonderful.
And many times we'll have one come in, and before we actually do any planning, we want to meet with the other one. In my 29 years, I've had 4 different occasions where generally it was the husband that came in, wanted to do the planning, took care of all the planning. Well, they passed, and in 4 different occasions, the wife had no idea about what happened next. Didn't know that their income was going to be cut. Didn't know that they didn't get a portion of their husband's pension. Things like that were done without them. That's why we make sure that we meet with both of them at some point in time so they know where to turn if something happens.
I mean, I know things are changing with the times, but it really does amaze me how many women are not really aware or don't want to be aware of their financial situations because they just assume that their husband or somebody in their life has it covered. But women, more often than not, live longer than men,
Right.
and they're always
Right.
left,
Right.
needing to know these things. It's so important.
Right. And you talk about income gap. Generally, when one spouse dies, the portions of the income shut down. And that's a problem when we see women outliving men. If they're only going to get one of the Social Security amounts, and if a pension falls off or cuts in half, we've got a big income gap there that we have to fill. And if they're living 10 to 15 years longer, it's got to be done through planning before it happens.
You mentioned living longer, and we are just, longevity is such a blessing with the medical system the way it is. We have so many more years, wonderful years, hopefully healthy years to live. But there also is difficulty there in planning for that.
Right.
Because I've seen that some people's accumulation phase, our younger years, can be just as long as their distribution phase. I mean, you might be retired for just as long as you're working, which was not an issue in our, grandfather's time.
Right. Yeah, because they had defined income. They knew where their income was going to come from. And we had talked about this earlier. The number one questions asked is, am I going to run out of money, or do I have enough to make it through retirement? And an educated guess isn't good enough anymore. So we have mathematical calculations we use, and we calculate using 1,000 different market scenarios or sequences. And we know, unless something health-wise, something like that happens, but we know if someone has enough money to make it through retirement or not.
Well, we're going to get to a quick commercial break, and then we're going to get back to it. But the number, again, is 844-484-8620. You're offering a complimentary retirement analysis, and this is something that a lot of people charge $1,000 or more for. So somebody can come to your office and even get a second opinion if they've already worked with another advisor.
Absolutely. And that's one of the number one things, we get is people want to come in and have a second opinion. And again, we talked about earlier, risk. We do a full risk analysis to make sure that the portfolio matches their current risk. We also do a Morningstar review that goes over their entire portfolio to see if it's kept up with its benchmarks, and also see the cost that's involved in it. So you want to talk about the portfolio?
Yeah, when we look at that portfolio review, we're also going to look at the correlation. We'll find a lot of people that may be in their 401k and have 5 or 6 or 10 different mutual funds, but if you look at the holding of those mutual funds, they're all the same top 10 holdings. So that Morningstar will also let them look at it and see, am I strongly correlated, and does that increase the risk I have if one section of the market takes a hit?
It's so important to have a professional in your corner. This is just unbelievable. We're going to get back in a few minutes, and we're going to talk more about risk in retirement.
How confident are you in your current financial plan? Do you know with certainty how the recent market volatility will affect your future hopes and dreams? How much are you paying in taxes? And how much are you losing to unnecessary high fees? You didn't work to save this money so that you could spend your time worried in retirement. Now is the time to take charge of your finances so you can feel confident about your future. Call in during the next 30 minutes of today's show only to set up an absolutely complimentary, no obligation, full-blown financial review that will result in your own customized written plan. This is a $999 value that we're giving away complimentary to the first 10 people who respond. We'll start with a full-blown analysis of what you already have, by running a report to untangle how much you are currently paying in fees, how you're allocated for risk, and what it's costing to work with your current advisor. Next, we'll identify your goals. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Where do you want to go? And who do you hope to go there with? Is your current financial plan set up to get you there without mishap? Let's design a roadmap to create a financial plan you can follow with confidence. Get the piece that so many people are missing from their retirement. Find out how having a written plan can make a difference to your retirement dreams. Call now to schedule your complimentary, no-obligation, full-blown financial review today.
Hello and welcome back to Diversified Wealth and Retirement. I'm Sarah Peterson here with Brad Buckler and Kent Stelgis of Diversified Wealth Advisors. How are you guys?
Good.
So we were talking earlier before break about risk and going towards retirement. I know a lot of people are sort of getting risk averse. So calculating some of that risk is important because when we're younger, we were so focused on accumulating income from the jobs we're at. And then when we're in retirement, that income is steady and predictable. It should be, at least, right?
Right, hopefully.
So are there ways to boost retirement income and maximize savings in retirement?
Yeah, absolutely. There's multiple ways to really look at how do we boost our retirement income and maximize our savings. And we're going to look at that from a couple different avenues, right? We're going to look at your overall plan and see maybe it makes sense to pay your house off early, because the moment you pay that house off, you've got an extra $1,500 or $2,000 a month, whatever that house payment is, in guaranteed income at that point because you're not paying it to that mortgage company. Another option that we can look at is maybe doing Roth conversion for some people, because what that's going to do is save on taxes. Again, we were talking about those taxes possibly doubling. So if you're able to minimize that tax risk to your portfolio, that's boosting your retirement income. There are multiple other options that we could look at for that. Does it make sense to keep your taxable income under a certain threshold? Because we know after you make a certain dollar amount, your Medicare is going to be at a higher rate, or your Social Security is going to be taxed at a higher rate. So we need to look at all those parts and pieces within your retirement plan to decrease taxes as much as possible throughout that retirement plan so that your net income is higher every month.
We touched a bit upon Roth IRA, and I know that's a question a lot of people have, is Roth conversions. Is it right for everyone? Who's it best for? Who's it not?
Yeah. Go ahead.
So when it comes to conversion, and we discussed it earlier, the earlier you start a retirement plan, the more opportunity to convert, the more opportunity to do a better job at tax planning. If you're already 65 in retirement, it may not be the best time to do conversions, because usually it takes about 5 years because the tax is paid on it. So the earlier you can do it, the better.
When you talk about Roth, you're taking advantage of taxes today, and that way you're predicting that potentially taxes are going up in the future, right? So
Correct.
Taking advantage,
Correct.
but it's a little intimidating for some people because they have to pay the taxes now.
Right.
So that might not be right for everybody.
There's a couple things we want to look at on that Roth conversion and see whether it fits within that person's plans, right? So if you want to convert 20 or 30 or let's say $100,000 worth of your traditional assets over to a Roth type investment vehicle, if you're in that 20% tax bracket and you take $100,000 and convert it, again, at the end of the year, you've got to come up with $20,000 in taxes on that. Well, obviously, that's going to take a hit to your portfolio. And as Brad said, we need time for that money to recover from that tax payment. So it really makes sense to look at that inside a plan, not individually. Individually can really set you up for some risks that you don't need to take.
We had some viewer questions during the break. If you don't mind, I might jump into a couple of those.
Sure. Yeah.
We had John from Overland Park. He said, I'm getting ready to retire. I heard you talk about dollar cost averaging in one of your classes. What did you mean by that?
Okay.
Yeah, so dollar cost averaging, most people think about that during their working years, because every paycheck, that's every other week or the 1st and 15th, you're going to take a portion of your paycheck and you're going to put that into your investments, right? Well, that means sometimes you're buying at the high point of the market, sometimes at the low point of the market, and really everywhere in between. When we talk about it, though, as we focus on those people that are 10 years from retiring, oftentimes people hit 59 and a half and they realize, hey, I've got this option called an in-service rollover, where most 401k companies will allow them to roll their assets out of their 401 into an IRA. Well, if somebody comes to us and their 401 is really, really at a much higher risk than they're comfortable with, it might not make the most sense for them to roll $500,000 over with us and us slam it all into the market at once, especially right now when we're at all-time market highs. So we'll sit down, create a plan with you that you're comfortable with when you're in the office to maybe over 8 months or a year, put that money in small pieces. So again, we're doing the exact same thing. We're buying part of it here while the market's high, but maybe as the market goes down, we're buying in some lower. So the average is that you're buying at a much lower spot than you would if you just threw it in, and we alleviate that market timing that doesn't work well for a lot of people.
And you get caught in the trap of buying way too high and then the market's falling after that.
I mean, market volatility is certain a topic of conversation right now.
Absolutely.
And we all know that it has to come down at some point.
Right.
So
We've got, most people have gotten very complacent with the markets bouncing back as fast as they do. We saw it at the end of 2018, start of 2019, and we saw it again last year, where the markets, majority of the markets went down 30% or more. But by the end of the year, they were bounced back. And that's an issue because it's giving people this sense that no matter if the market goes down 30%, it'll bounce back and we'll still end up making having good performance.
I mean, again, when things seem too good to be true, they usually are. So we kind of,
Right.
not to be a doomsday prepper, but so I'd love to let the viewers out there know exactly what it is that you're offering when they come to your office and they come to see you, because they're probably sitting there thinking, I have spoken to somebody, but they have never mentioned any of these things to me before.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you call 1-844-484-8620, we're offering a complimentary portfolio and retirement analysis. We'll sit down with you, get to know you, understand your dreams, goals, when you want to retire, and we'll put together a plan that makes sense for you.
This is incredible to me because, as we talked about before, other people charge $1,000 or more for this. And the fact that there are a lot of people out there who don't have any kind of plan. They haven't spoken to anyone. And it's necessary for all of us. We don't learn this in school, and there's just too much information out there for us to decipher on our own. So having a financial professional in your corner, so important and relatively risk-free. So why wouldn't they do it?
And that's one of the issues, especially as complicated it is today. We see so many people that try to take their accumulation style planning into retirement. Usually it's loaded full of risk. Mm-hmm. So we, in turn, would like to look at the risk by doing the risk analysis, bring it down if it needs to be brought down, and then do income planning from there.
Well, as always, we ran out of time when there's still lots more to talk about, but we'll get to it next time. It's been wonderful meeting with you. That number again is 844-484-8620. Give Brad and Kent a call, and they will get you on the road to retirement.